This is about how to paint shiny things when there is no tube of shiny. You have to create the illusion. Let's get started. Here's the photograph, which is my photograph, and you can use it if you want to. You can screen capture it and print it out. Also, as you watch this video, if you want it to go faster or slower, you can touch the screen and 3 small dots will appear on the upper right-hand side, and you can speed things up or slow them down. This is how far I got yesterday. This was just blocking things in. You can see all the test dabs on the left. I was trying to figure out where my darkest darks were and where my lightest lights were. I needed to sort of conceptualize that in my head, and then I could get started today. So this is the start of today. So this takes a considerable amount of study, and I would also say discipline, because what creates shiny is a very big difference between your lightest lights and your darkest darks. You don't see it in like a flower petal or in, I'm trying to think of other things. Let's say like the surface of a peach. You don't get what you end up with those kinds of things. Oftentimes it's like a gradual difference between color and value. But on shiny things, there can be a really dramatic difference between the two. And it's finding that creates the illusion of shiny. So in a sense, you have to go darker than you think you want to go in order to create the illusion. So you have to sort of sneak up on it a little bit. And the other thing that's happening here is there are all these different balls that have different colors. So I have to be really careful on my palette and keep things clean. I like to usually paint in one go, but that was not the case here. I had to really separate things and slow down. You know, I had to attend to what was yellow and then attend to what was blue and then attend to what was green. You know, really kind of figuring that out. At the same time, there's a lot of reflections that are happening in this photograph. Now, I took this photograph without a artificial light. I let the natural light come in the window. And the reason for that is because if I put an artificial light on it, there would have been so many little sparkles and dots of color that nothing would have made any sense. So even though there's no one direct source, sometimes your best way to get information is to use the natural light and just become accustomed to the fact that there are going to be different light sources, just like there are when you look in real life. Very seldom is there one light source. So it kind of complements the natural way that we see things. The other thing that happens with these shiny objects is they are reflected in each other, and I have to remember that. And I'm keeping that in my brain, knowing that there are a couple spots or dots that I'm going to have to put in that, that are reflective of the color that the object is next to. The other thing that will make something really shiny and colorful, I would say, in terms of saturation is make your background as neutral as possible. Now, there's going to be some spillover. You know, look at the green ornament right now. In that shadow, even though it looks gray in the photograph, I kind of have to overcompensate for that and just know that there's going to be also some green that bleeds over. Kind of, I guess you would call it like bonding or some sort of integration of forms. It's very seldom in nature does one form stop and the other one starts up again. You know, you try to find bridges. I think some painters call them bridges between things. And if you can find them, that's great. And if you can't find them, create them, because it will allow things to look like they're in the actual background or in the actual space as opposed to being cut out and pasted on. So that's just something that you learn over time working from photographs and also from looking at things in real life. You just look for where things meet. Look for something when eat dinner tonight or something. Look at when a cup meets the table. Try to identify what is that color? What is that shape? What value is it? The more you kind of do that and study when you're not painting, the more you'll bring to the table when it's time to paint. It's just really, really helpful. So things are going along pretty good here, and I knew from yesterday that I only had pretty much my midtones in. I knew I was going to have to go in and make things darker. Also, what you'll see is Naples yellow, which I put in where some people might use masking fluid. I don't use masking fluid. Instead, I just use a very light Naples yellow to map that in. I put it in because I know if I don't, I'll drive over it, and that will be a mistake. It's so easy to lose. You know, once you lose the white of the paper, there is just no getting it back. You can get lighter, but you'll never get back to the white of the paper. And what I want to do is leave some spots that are absolutely white very few of them, and I've identified in my head where they are, so I'm not going to drive over them, and also where my darkest darks are. So things are starting to look a little bit rounded. I'm starting to feel like I've got my shapes are starting to be less flat and looking a little bit more round in the space. Also, what's happening about now is this is speeded up to 4 times as fast as I usually paint. I think this was a 45-minute session, 38 to 40-minute session or something like that. And, you know, the more you sit and you paint, the more you're going to see. And so I started to see more and more. And the other thing that happens is you just get looser. You start to go into painter brain and not think about what you're, you just stop thinking about the world around you, I think, and you start just totally concentrating on the world of color, value, shape, and saturation. So things are looking pretty okay right now. I've found some of those reflective spots, and now I'm feeling like, you know, as soon as you do something in one part of the painting, it's going to affect the other part of the painting. Just it's because it's all connected, just like in real life, everything is connected. False beginnings, false beginnings, false endings everywhere in life, and that's true here as well. And so I realize, okay, now that I've made that blue ball looks more saturated, I need to saturate that green one a little bit more. This looks a little bit like fiddling around. Fiddling around is never a good thing. It's a sign that I don't know what I'm doing or I'm not solving a problem. It can often be the sign that you're done with a painting, but I knew I wasn't done. I knew that I didn't have things anchored in as much as I wanted them to. So I thought, okay, darken what's underneath the ornaments. Now remember, in photographs always have darker shadows than are in real life. So I don't want to make them as dark as they are in the photograph. And I want to have some color in them as well, because that's reflective of the ball and also makes that bonding thing happen and bridge between one shape and another. Now I'm about as loose as I'm ever going to get. And I realize I want to hit and get into the darkest darks that I can get into. So that's what I'm going to try to do now. Now remember what I said about shiny. Shiny is going to give me, will appear when I have a very big difference between my darkest darks and my lightest lights. And that's what I'm trying to achieve here. I'm trying to get things to shine. Oop. Guess I felt like that shadow needed to be more saturated. I don't want it to be too saturated though. I definitely want my background to stay neutral. All right, I'll dry everything. And I can't remember what happens next, but we're getting near the end of the painting, and look at all the color dabs. And I think that's just the color dabs. No, it must have been yesterday and today. I never put a dab on the painting until, not never. If I'm sure of something, I'll put it on the painting, but usually I'll test it on that side, and I check it with the, I checked with the value finder many times because I was matching value throughout. So it gets a little complicated, or I shouldn't say complicated as much as it is strategic. Everything has to relate to everything else. So if there's a dark on the yellow ball, and I want that to be the same value as a dark on the green ball, then I got to check that with the value finder and make sure that they're the same. Now I'm going to anchor everything in with a neutral background. And that's a gray. My go-to gray is Naples yellow, a permanent rose, and cerulean blue. But I realize I need that because the white of the paper, I can't leave the white of the paper white because then my whites that I reserved all along the way won't look white enough. So I have to make that adjustment to the background, which I'm happy to do. And about here is where I felt like things finally, there we go. I felt like I achieved shiny. I felt pretty good about this. Took a lot of color dabs to get there. Took a couple of days, not of, you know, intense concentration, but just figuring out. So remember to keep the whites of your paper white, your paints wet, mass for value, mix for color, and please join my YouTube channel, and I'll see you next time. Okay, bye-bye.